Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 best OG travel tames. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. In at number 10, I've decided to put the Ichthyosaurus, as I find this is a really valuable travel tame. It is so versatile in how it went around the space in 2015 Arc times, and it really was innovative in the way that it added the passive taming ability, which is one which we all very much know and love to this day, and it was the one to innovate it. I'm confident it was the first one, and it was a really fast underwater tame. All of your underwater traveling needs of the OG era of Arc were kept fully under control. There was no issues with traveling these things around anywhere. They could get from A to B insanely quickly, very easy to tame as well, and you know, they would spawn in some quite nice areas as well, so definitely a OG travel tame. Next up, we have got the Rex, and undoubtedly it was still a good travel mount for me. When I was going on quite a long journey, I would actually bring the Rex along with me. It might sound a little bit stupid to you, but this really did just assist me in that sense of traveling, as I felt I had a lot of support to go with me, and that nothing really could face me when I was on a Rex. And that does apply to, I think, one other creature later on in this list as well. Just, you know, the Rex could get from A to B reasonably quickly. It wasn't the fastest, but its stamina didn't feel awful at all when it came out. I don't know why it feels actually quite bad now, and it felt like, yeah, that's a reasonable speed for this creature to go at. And it was just the way that it would go, and then it did the thing, and it did what I needed it to do, and it attacked anything that I needed it to attack, and I survived all of my journeys going on with a Rex. I wouldn't take it underwater, obviously. I didn't. They're really bad swimmers, but anywhere else, it's definitely fine. Next up, I've decided to put the Baryonyx, as although this was a bit of a later one, so it doesn't quite fit into the OG as much as some of the others on the list because it wasn't a release tame, I find it is still very deserving, as its caving travel was something which was great, really. The ability to traverse through caves, but also it could travel through mountains, through water, and through all of that as well. It was a great all-rounder. You don't really say traveling through caves in Arc, but it did add to the element of travel. You could travel to the caves really easily and then just go in them and traverse all of them really easy, so you could say traversal tame in that sense. But you know, still it sticks to the travel taming niche. It is a very useful creature, very easy to tame as well. It could jump around and it had a lot of speed on it, and still is a very great carnivore to have in your roster if you haven't actually tamed one already. Definitely worth it. I feel like this creature sort of gets discounted when it comes to the OG traveling tames, and I know it's kind of a little bit far-fetched further because you have to wait for the Snowbound to be released, but that's the same time frame as when the Baryonyx was out, because I'm pretty sure it's roughly when the Swamps and Redwoods and stuff came out. And the Megalosaurus was just really that creature where you could get around with a lot of speed on this thing. I know I've got the female one here because it was kind of meant for a worst Arc tames video, but still the male one would be the one that we usually tend to just look so much more impressive actually generally as well because of those horns. But you really could get a lot of speed on them, and that made them very effective and useful mounts that I would use all over the place all the time, and they would just get me everywhere really quickly. Yes, they didn't do a heck of a lot of damage, but they could jump around and they could do all of that, and they could get me from A to B quickly, and they were easy to tame, so even if they did die, they were quite easily replaceable. The Spino is sort of the upgrade to the Rex for me when it comes to a traveling mount. It really does have everything going for it in terms of that. Compared to the Rex, it is faster mobility. It obviously can travel underwater, which the Rex really is terrible at, and on top of that, it is just generally a more mobile creature. The only real difficulty is they're a bit rarer to find around the place, and you know, you might have some difficulty taming because they're a lot more mobile. It's less easy to trap, you could say, but I really find that that's not too much of an issue when you're dealing with a creature like this. It is totally fine, and you'll have no real issues whatsoever. They are great tames, and and you can do a heck of a lot with them, and you will definitely enjoy having one as a travel mount, and I definitely did back then, and it really was something which I could highly respect at the time, and I still highly respect to this day. Really, really great tames for traveling. In number 5, we've got the Thyla, and I found this really did make a huge difference when I'm having to knock it back a bit from the OG scale because of it being later on, but it really did sort of change the traveling game for a huge amount, and it really is a great traveling mount still to this day, and I love it for all of its versatile traveling abilities. It has a lot of speed, it can get around with relative ease, and you'll really find no issue with getting anywhere with this thing apart from underwater areas, which is the only place where it really lacks. They could also deal quite a lot of damage too, so the protection was definitely there when it came to these creatures. You definitely wouldn't feel like you couldn't be protected under these circumstances with a creature like this. They did everything that you needed for them, and it sort of made the Rex a little bit obsolete for that traveling need, as they were faster and they still did tons of damage for me. Next up, I've decided to put the Raptor, as I find this is just generally a really useful tame in my opinion. I feel like it does everything that you really need it to do when it comes to travel. It has been around since the game has been released, so it definitely falls into the OG stages, and it could pack a lot of speed, a lot of punch, and generally just did very well in terms of traveling. And again, they were quite easily replaceable, like the Megalosaurus, which really did aid them, and on top of that they could do quite a hefty amount of damage too. They really did actually excel in the damage to size ratio, like you could have Carnos and things like that, and they're actually a quite nice honorable mention, so I'll give them one there. But the Raptor just seems to get a lot more oomph when it came to the traveling of creatures and just generally yourself as well. It was a high tier traveling creature to say the least, and that is definitely why it is deserving of this spot on the list. In number 3, I've decided to put the Quetzal, as although this was a little bit of a later addition in 2015, it has come before the Baryonyx, the Thyla, and the Megalosaurus, and it was just such a game changer to the traveling just spectrum on a whole. And obviously you could level up that speed too, you could build a base on the back of these things, and they really did an awful lot when it came to traveling around the place. They obviously weren't the fastest when you first got them, but the fact that they had tons of stamina and weight meant you could carry metal all across the map with these things, and tons of it too, without the risk of being encumbered, which actually the next creature on the list has a little bit of an issue with. But still, I would consider it a better OG Arc travel mount, as it's still very useful to this day and a very respected flyer. But this obviously still is as well, just maybe not quite to the same degree, but it really did hit hard, make a difference, so it deserves to be in the number 3 spot. So as I was saying, in number 2 we've got the Pteranodon. This is the creature that I was alluding to. It is probably the first flyer that you'll tame in Arc, and definitely for all the OGs out there, it was your first flyer that you tame. Well, actually in the number 1 spot is a different flyer, which is definitely a lot more preferable and in my opinion better, but we'll get onto that when we get onto it. But this creature was an incredibly fast, agile flyer that was relatively easy to tame. There wasn't a lot of real difficulty. The fact that you could use a bowler really did aid in the taming of this thing, as traps weren't really widely used when the game first released. There wasn't all of that infrastructure built in. It was simply, you know, you do just bowler the thing and do that, or if it wasn't able to be bowlered, then you just run after it and keep tranking it, or like stand on top of a cliff or something like that. They were the strategies used, not really traps. But yes, relatively easy to tame, apart from the saddle was a bit of a pain to craft, but it really is deserving of the spot. And in number 1, we've got the RG, and I just find this is the best OG travel mount for just a few reasons. It has a lot more weight than the Pteranodon. It has in some ways a lot more, actually it has a lot more stamina than the Pteranodon, and if you leveled it you could still get it to the same amount of speed as a Pteranodon and really have a lot of agility on this thing. Not to mention that they could pick up more creatures as well, and I'm not sure if they had this at the time, but their saddle obviously now acts as a portable smithy, but again, not too sure if they had that at the time, but they still had all of those other features. Also, not sure if they had weight reduction at the time, but they were definitely far better for getting metal, crystal, obsidian, those kind of things, because metal especially, actually, really important game resource, and the fact that you could get it so easily and efficiently with this thing and travel it back to your base with the Pteranodon, that was an absolute pain, and you could barely gather any of it. You might as well just bring a land mount, whereas this thing, it still definitely worked effectively. The top 10 at best Arc resource gatherers. So in at number 10, we have got the Astratina. If you didn't know, this is a really great passive way to get yourself cementing paste, sort of like how the Basilosaurus is a way of getting passive oil quite easily, and I do find, yes, you know, that could be an honorable mention for this list, although I have not got it included here. I just find this isn't the hardest thing to tame, just some sweet vegetable cake will get it done, and the fact that you can get loads of cementing paste through this is really useful, especially if you're on a server, because I'll be running all the time you're offline. Really amazing thing. So is the dung beetles as well, actually. So the shadow mane is something or just some creature that you may not consider to be a great resource gatherer, but in my opinion it really can do quite a bit in terms of hide and meat gathering. It is a very nice carnivore to use, extremely mobile, you can get around with ease, and it's actually quite a good creature for gathering some fish meat as well. It can be very easily done as it is a tremendous swimmer, and you do find that with a lot of carnivores. I was considering putting maybe like the Carcharodontosaurus or the Rex on here, or the Spino or a creature like that, but I find that these creatures do it better because they are more mobile. I'm not sure if the meat gathering rate is different and actually a lot higher on those, but I just find it's easier to get it done with those still really powerful small creatures, as they can just get everything done more effectively and efficiently. In my eyes, it really does just work well for me, and that is why I simply have to put these creatures on the list, as I really do love them for all of the gathering which they do for me, and I actually think they deserve a little bit more attention in the resource gathering community, because they definitely can do quite a bit which you might not expect them to do. The Castorides is up next, and also the Megalosaurus, as the male Megalosaurus, as a short honorable mention, as it is a really great stats gatherer, and I really do commend it for that. I just haven't put it on this list because I thought it would kind of go nicely with this creature, which is the Castoroides. Of course, I've already said that, and this is your go-to wood gatherer, and obviously wood and thatch go hand in hand. One is a very useful resource for any kind of structure, guns, weaponry, and one is just naked Zombo's absolute favourite resource. And with the Castoroides being so good at getting wood, they really do deserve to be on the list. Yes, obviously, I think it's like the chainsaw. I think it's called that, at least in the game. My mind is failing me at this time of day, or night I should really say. But yes, that is a very good way of getting wood. But the Castoroides is also a splendid way too. It is relatively quick and agile and get around too. And actually, in the early game, it can be a reasonably good way to get silica pearls, as they're not the worst swimmers out there, and they can get away for some dangers. And on top of that, actually, they can pack some bite and punch as well. Definitely don't underestimate them in the damage department, although maybe you originally would. At number 7, we have got the Stegosaurus, and it's just one of those creatures where you do have to respect it for its berry gathering. It is one of those creatures where it's like, it does its job effectively. You can say the Bronto is a very good suggestion as well, but the Stegosaurus, the OG, the Trike, and the Parasaur is also some good suggestions on top of that as well. But I find out of all of the creatures on the list, the Stego kind of deserves the most credit, as I find it can gather a lot of berries reasonably quickly, especially considering its size. Yes, maybe not quite to the volume of the Bronto, but it comes with a little bit more ease of use and also general versatility as well. I know they're not aspects which are on the list today, but still I thought I would factor that in, as they are just generally just nicer creatures to use on the whole. Also, they're a little bit more inconspicuous as well, so if you don't have cryopods yet, you can tuck them away more easily, and that's more useful obviously for PvP servers, but for PvE as well, you might just not have the space to facilitate something like a Bronto, at least not easily. Yes, you could leave them outside, but you risk them getting killed by some other dinos. And obviously they're great tanks as well for given PvP scenarios, and it is just actually pretty good at gathering wood as well. I think with the heavy plate, something like that, either the heavy plate or the hardened plate. It'll probably be the heavy plate because the hardened plate's the one used for turret soaking. But yeah, that one's actually pretty good for gathering wood as well. The Deinonychus, in my opinion, is sort of the upgrade to that meat and hide gathering thing, and that is why I've decided to put it here. Generally, I do prefer them as creatures. They have the bleed ability as well. The Shadowmane doesn't, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, they don't have dehydration buffs. They're not going to be as good as gathering all kinds of fish, but still, they can kill big and large creatures really quickly. They can simply grapple onto them like that. You can even just bring one out. You don't really need more than that for all of your resource gathering needs. Quickly tear them to shreds and get all of that meat and hide. You're going to have no issues whatsoever. Pretty great at gathering some chitin as well. Keratin is going to be easy too. And actually, that does remind me, if you're wondering about the Megatherium, I'm going to give that a brief honorable mention, as that is a really great chitin gatherer for its insect buff, where essentially if it kills an insect, it will rage and you can just get loads of damage out of it. But generally, going to a cave with pretty much any creature that is powerful enough to defeat everything with all of those bugs, you're going to have a lot of chitin out of it anyway. But the Megatherium really is going to farm tons and tons and tons, especially if you're in the insect cave. And there's another creature which is actually further on the list which could be useful in that scenario as well, but we'll get onto it slightly later on in the list. But yeah, the Deinonychus, a great meat and hide chitin keratin gatherer. It takes no fall damage, really is an extremely mobile creature, and very much deserving of this spot on the list. In number 5 is the Theri, and I'll give the Moss Chopped a little bit of credit as well, although the Theri Shadow is unlocked at level 69. Either way, this creature is, in my opinion, the best fiber gatherer out there, whereas the Moss Chops is also a really great one and really great for organic polymer as well, and I do really attribute it for that. And it is a great gathering tame. It's just, you know, there are so many creatures to really get through, and these are the ones that I've thought of first and resonate most with me. But if you do feel as if I've missed any creatures, I probably have acknowledged them in some way, or maybe at least tried to in this video. And even if I've completely missed them blatantly, I'm sure I'll still care. And leave a comment down below with what your favorite gatherer is, or gatherers which you think that I may have missed, as I always do want to know what maybe I could add to these videos into the future to maybe just make them better and in some ways more personalized to you as well, while still keeping the opinions valid to me as well. Yes, I know there's a lot of PvP players that watch my content, but do just take into mind that I'm a very PvE centered channel, so most of your PvP stuff, while interesting to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense overall. I'm really like not knowledgeable at all when it comes to any of that stuff, and yes, they're all very nice and useful tactics, but I'm just surely I don't really use them as much as maybe I should. Speaking of that creature that I was talking about before, with that insane gathering of not chitin but with caves and insects, you're going to get yourself a heck of a lot of cementing space with this thing, much faster and much quicker than the Ashetina, obviously. And also, sorry about that part ramble on about the Theri there when I talked about other stuff. I went a bit off topic. I'll promise not to do that later on, and also just throughout the rest of this video. But yes, this is the best cementing space gatherer out there in my opinion. Beaver dams exist, but nothing does really compare to a creature like this. It is fast, agile, very mobile, and if you get a good level, it has enough health and damage to withstand some caves, especially even the insect cave. If you just take your time a little bit, you can get yourself tons and tons, tens of thousands of chitin. In fact, the real difficulty is just getting all of that chitin out of the inventory of this thing and out of the cave, because you'll be slot capped and overweight and all of that stuff as well. That's not the best situation to find yourself in, but they can just gather so much chitin. That's simply what they do. And also they can gather some fish pretty effectively as well. They are great swimmers, and you can do a little bit of combat with them, so some hide and meat wouldn't be the hardest thing out there to get, but mainly these things are the best for chitin gathering, which is useful in so many crafting recipes. In number 3, I've decided to put the Mantis, as I find it is a really versatile creature. Yes, maybe you don't think of it as a really great gatherer for all of or just specific resources. But the thing is, this thing can gather just so many things, anything that you can physically gather with a given melee weapon, that being meat, hide, chitin, keratin, wood, thatch, stone, flint, metal, obsidian, crystal, rare mushrooms, rare flowers, fiber, and all of that stuff you can gather with this creature with absolute ease. You just simply need to equip that weapon, and you can get quite a lot of it pretty quickly. The only difficulty is sometimes the mantis can be a little bit of a pain to tame, and especially if you aggro it in some cases, it's not the easiest or most friendliest thing to come to. But once you've got one, especially if you've got a high level one, you're really going to enjoy these things and their versatility in resource gathering, which is why I think they really do deserve this spot on the list. Again, I named just so many resources, and there are even more as well that these creatures can gather. Pretty much, again, any feasible resource that you can gather with any given melee weapon out there on a creature, or just actually that you can equip. Tech weapons, I'm pretty sure, do not work on this thing. And also, just to bear in mind, the durability of the weapons will drop a lot more on the mantis compared to when it is on you. So, you know, the weapons might break a little bit faster than you expect. At number 2, we have got the Desmodus, and this is just for actually maybe 2 simple reasons. They are really great at farming blood bags, and one of my favorite art creatures out there is the Bloodstalker, and also the Desmodus as well, and that is very useful for taming Bloodstalkers and the Desmodus as well, and they can give you a little bit of a nice healing boost as well, although the medical brews will work a lot better. And I'm pretty sure there is a timer on how fast you can consume blood bags as well, so not the best, but you still can use them in a pinch. But the main thing about this is the fact that they have Sanguine Elixir, which is an absolute cheat for tames. The fact that you can craft it with the resources that it gathers, obviously being blood bags, it's also great meat and hide gatherer, chitin, keratin, all the things that you can gather for animals, it's going to do perfectly as well. But that Sanguine Elixir, 30% of that tame is done with a click of a button, no issues whatsoever. It really is a golden star creature when it comes to its resource gathering. I really feel as if it deserves to be in the number 2 spot. It is just so good, and that resource is just so useful to have, especially for me as a PvE player that does a heck of a lot of taming. But anyway, in at number 1 is the Anki, and also the Dodig as well. That's just a side thing. They really both do fit into the number 1 spot for me. They are just such good gatherers, but the Anki is the main one, as without metal, really, what are you going to do in Ark? I know you can gather metal without the Anki. The Mantis can gather metal really well, but the Anki gathers it a lot better. You can get crystal and obsidian a lot better. This essentially acts as the pick upgraded. I hear some people going around just like, oh, why isn't there a better pick after the metal pick? This is essentially that, and then if you want a better hatchet, then get the Dodig and it will do all of that for you. These 2 creatures are the best resource gatherers in the game. It is going to do everything that you need it to do, or everything that you need a pick or a hatchet to do, but just on another level. And if you pair them with an RG as well, if you've got some cryopods too, then you can carry them around very easily. But then, boom, like that, get loads of metal, stone, thatch, and wood, and obsidian, and crystal, and all of those resources, and then carry them all back in the RG and probably not even be encumbered whatsoever. It is just such a great resource gathering strategy, and I really do advise it. No mining drill or whatever is going to compare to the sheer amount of gathering that you can get out of a creature like this. And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Maciejewski, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.